next hour, Dr. Eli Karam's in the studio, marriage and family therapist, and we'll talk about a few issues, including when the two of you travel in a car and the little things that go on there. Let's say you're driving somewhere this weekend for the holiday. Full of pressures, who's listening to what you're going to do, and anyway, some fascinating dynamics take place when you're rolling down the road. We'll get to that as one of the topics. Sports also included, too, with Dr. Eli and a few. News, a service of Flood Wood Care. Very exciting. I love game weekend. Eli's coming, ladies and gentlemen. He's actually here in the studio already. Dr. Eli Karam, good to see you again, brother.
Good to see you, Terry. It's a holiday weekend, a football weekend.
And a travel weekend for a lot of people. You may have noticed the gasoline prices have gone up again.
Conveniently, right in time for the travel weekend, yeah.
I mean, amazing how that works out. All right, just before the top of the hour, I told people we were going to talk about people getting in the car together. Couples, They get in the... Let's have a nice car trip.
Right, I'm going to be on one of those car trips to visit my in-laws in Chicago, so you know it is a confined space. So believe it or not, all the research says that number one place where couples have these big blowouts is in a car because you can't get away.
Really?
Yeah,
That's the worst place?
Well, it's one of the worst places, I should say, but it is a confined space. So if your partner really wants to bring something up, and you're trying, there's probably, if it's a long car ride, they're going to bring it up, and you can listen to the radio some of the time, you can focus on the road some of the time, but probably is another time you're going to have to address it. So it's good to have some ground rules going into that long drive.
All right, before we get to that, let's lay out some ground rules, or at least give us a little road map, as it were. When you're in the car, she's cold, you're too hot.
Right.
How do you work that? I know cars say, well, on this side we can make it very cold, and on that side we can make it... That's really not the whole issue all the time.
No.
How should you talk that stuff out?
Yeah, I think you want to have the expectation on the trip, especially if it's a long drive. Who's doing the driving? Some people are more comfortable driving than others, and I guess some people would say, my wife would say, well, if I'm going to do the driving, I can pick the weather, I can pick the radio station, I can do that. But you want to negotiate that in advance because you're uncomfortable on a long trip, but it just takes that little minor annoyance, and you start talking about the week, or you start picking on your partner, and then suddenly before you know it, you could be having a blowout in the car.
Is it important to be quiet if you're in the passenger seat? Let's say you're the husband and you don't like something or other. There's something you want to talk about or whatever, but shouldn't you can you hold it in until we get to our destination?
It depends how long the drive is, I think. And I think in general, the idea that you should not bring up anything too anxiety-provoking or a trigger item or a hot topic if you have a long car drive, I think that's probably a safe bet unless your partner kind of introduces it and they're doing the drive and they're comfortable with it. So I guess a lot of people defer to the driver. Other thing, though, sometimes if I don't talk and I'm the passenger seat on a long drive, I'll fall asleep, and that's sometimes that's not good either. So I think you have to talk about something. You have to be real careful not to bring up those topics that you might need to have some ground rules around.
Dr. Eli Karam works for the University of Louisville Kent School of Social Work. You can also see him on WBKI TV on Monday mornings.
Monday morning, but Jerry Lewis is preempting us this week, so you have to wait another week.
But you get to hear him on the Terry Liners radio show every few weeks, and he's great on there. And you're a marriage and family therapist. So
that's right.
In a marriage, in a coupling, even if you're not legally married.
Committed relationship.
Does someone have to have the upper hand? Is there really a power? Does someone have 51% of the stock?
Right. I think when you start going tit for tat, quid pro quo, scorekeeping, I think that's never a good sign. I think in equitable relationships, it's not about a 50-50 split. It's about, does it feel fair? Meaning, I might make more of the income, my partner might do more at home, but it feels equitable, and we're not scorekeeping. But I think, sure, people control, and generally, people control in a lot of relationships, and sometimes the person that's least interested, a lot of times in sex, has more power in the relationship. A person that controls their money has more power. But I think those are kind of slippery slopes, and really in the best relationships, you're not keeping score. You're not worrying about those things. It seems fair. It seems equitable.
But you don't want to feel like a doormat either. You don't want to feel like I'm always giving in. Well, I just don't care. He's more uptight than I am, or whatever. She's more uptight. And so I just whatever. And when they say that, you're also making a play there too. You're you're kind of manipulating the weather by just saying, yeah, whatever.
Right, this kind of passive-aggressive stance is no good either. And many people start by making concessions early in a relationship in this courting phase where you want to put on the best face forward, you want someone to really like you, but they make these concessions early on. That's not really who they are. And then later on, when they assert themselves, it's really different for the other partner. They say, well, I didn't realize you felt that strongly about that. Why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? So you got to know who you are, and if you find yourself, even before you get in a committed relationship, kind of changing yourself for that other person, that's not good. You got to be clear what your expectations are. They got to be transparent and on the table.
Sooner or later, the real you emerges.
That's right, and the sooner it does that, the better your partner has a chance to judge, is this the right type of relationship for me? Don't cover it up.
What about if you fell into a relationship and you know, you were just head over heels in love, man or woman, you're head over heels in love with your partner, and then after a while, these things that were slightly annoying are becoming massively irksome.
You just nailed it. I mean, that happens for most people. People believe this myth that opposites attract, and we know all the social psychological research says that's not true. It's really more like birds of a feather flock together. So these things that start out, they might even be interesting. Oh, well, he has this quirk, or he does this, and over time, as you said,
it's so cute.
Right. Over time, the cute becomes horribly annoying and sometimes a deal breaker. So it's really important when you're picking someone that you are aligned on these kind of big personality and behavior dimensions. It doesn't mean there can't be some complementarity, but more than like, you want someone that likes what you like, that has the same background you do, has the same kind of moral, religious values, same education level, socioeconomic standing. I mean, everything says that, again, compatibility in those dimensions is really more important than difference.
So the Cinderella story, the pretty woman story that, you know, she's from a different realm of life, that doesn't work in real life. Did John Kerry have to marry a zillionaire? I mean, the only reason I brought up his name is because the Forbes list came out this week that said he's the richest guy in Congress. Well, he's married to the Heinz ketchup heiress.
That's right. That helps a lot. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, he was sort of around money people growing up. So that's my only point in bringing up his name is this. If you're swimming in that pool, should you stay in that pool?
Probably, yeah. From a research standpoint and then looking at everything like that. But I've worked with lots of couples, and they look really different, and they make it work. But they have a way to navigate those differences early on in the relationships. Back we were saying a couple seconds ago, be transparent, be yourself, and if there are differences, you have a way to talk about them early in the relationship. It's much better than trying to hide this part of yourself or trying to act like something that you're not just to impress the other person. I see that all the time.
We see that with a lot of guys who are driving in cars that they can't afford and wearing jewelry they can't afford or buying her things they can't afford, but they're trying to impress her when really they're mounting debt and creating more pressure, which comes out sideways.
Right.
In other ways, when there's really resentment building, but they're trying to impress her and she thinks he's a roller.
Right.
And he set himself up for this. So how do you, let's move to the next point here, how do you break the news to somebody? Emperor's New Clothes. It's not exactly
right.
What you're thinking here. I mean, you have to do it gently. You can't just walk in one day and say, guess what? I'm a fraud.
Right.
But you love this person and you want to hold on to him. You don't want it to collapse, but creditors are on your back or whatever.
Right.
But the reality is around the corner. How do you let somebody know that, you know what, honey, I got to make some changes here?
Right. I think many men and women do this. They live above their means to try to impress their partner. And I think once the relationship deepens to that level where you want to make a further commitment, you start talking about your financial situation. You start talking about your long-range plans, and you lay that out for your partner. So if there's nothing there, you want them to know that. And you want them also to know you really want to be in a relationship with them. You care about them. And one of the ways you try to show that earlier on is by buying them these things or having this lifestyle, but it's not really who you are. And that's tough for a lot of people. Get wrapped up in that lifestyle, living above their means, especially, or in economic times like this where they did have this disposable income before and they no longer do. They have not made that shift. And that even happens for committed couples, whether married or in a long-term relationship. It's like they're used to doing these things. They kind of fool themselves, and they haven't cut back in all these areas. And their credit card debt is mounting. They're behind on bills, and that's a slippery slope. And again, more than anything else, more than sex, more than in-laws, couples fight about money. So you got to be.
Funny you'd mention that because in our next segment we're going to talk about in-laws and more money issues.
Perfect.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Dr. Eli Karam. His website, by the way, is elikaram.com. Karam is spelled Karam. elikaram.com. We're back in a moment here on 84 WHAS.